I was scrolling through the comments that you guys have been giving us so far, and I would like to thank you all so much for doing that. It really gives us a lot of motivation to make more videos, so keep them coming. And special thanks to Muhammad Hafizi, who has given us a great topic to talk about for this video. Hi, I'm Frankie. Welcome back to my fuck show. Many of us are still in Chinese New Year mood. Thankfully, this year we get to reunite with our families to celebrate this festive season. In Malaysia, celebration means food. Must have meat. Meat means prosperity, and the most common meat we Malaysians consume is poultry. As a result, poultry becomes one of the things that will see prices go up during festive seasons. So, technically speaking, poultry companies should earn more money and therefore share prices should go up, right? Feng Shui is not good for many businesses in this year of the tiger. According to my bakwa, since October 2020, the animal feed cost that the old McDonald buys for his farm has gone up by 30 to 35%. Scary leh! You know what's even scarier? Animal feed costs usually make up to 70% of production costs of chickens and eggs. Why so much? What else do you think you need to do to rear chicken? You don't need to lay nice tiles, no need for expensive chandeliers, no need to install cabinets. Let's not go too far. The point is, feed cost makes up the tiger share of the production cost component because there's nothing much you need to do in poultry farming other than making sure the guys are healthy. If chicken is one of your typical Chinese New Year food ingredients, corn, soybean meal, and everything nice, these are the ingredients chosen to rear the perfect chicken. There is one thing in common about all these main ingredients that our chicken eats. None of them are grown in Malaysia, which means we need to source corn and soybean meals from countries that grow those crops, such as Brazil and Argentina. What is the currency that generally people use when we talk about imports? The US dollar. And how is the ringgit doing against the US dollar? Bad. So we need to pay more in order to get our hands on animal feed. To sum it all up, inflation that we have talked about many times in previous videos. In this case, the raw ingredient prices to feed chickens is the main culprit that resulted in an increase in production costs for poultry business. On top of that, our fellow Malaysians generally don't like dirty jobs like cleaning chicken shit in the barn, even after the coronavirus put many of them out of jobs. They would rather be employed and complain about having no money. So, the poultry business becomes one of the industry that has no choice but to rely heavily on foreign labours to get jobs done. But then, our borders are still closed to control the spread of the virus. Even if it is open, some countries are threatening that they are not going to send more workers to Malaysia. If you recall, when countries around the world started to reopen their economies all around the same time last year, supplies were unable to keep up with pent-up demand, and this resulted in a rapid increase in inflation. From a business perspective, they became unable to cope with the sudden increase of raw material prices. Logically speaking, when businesses face an increased pressure on production costs, they will pass it on to consumers so they can protect their profit margin. Unfortunately, it is not so straightforward for farming and poultry business in Malaysia. You see, food is considered an essential product, and whenever food prices go up, we complain. The government gets very anxious when the rakyat complains, because if people are unhappy with the government, they may lose votes in the next general election. So, in order to make the rakyat happy, they control the prices of essential products such as petrol prices, or in this case, poultry price. Between December 7 to the end of 2021, the government had initiated the Malaysian Family Maximum Price Scheme, where it was implemented as a measure to stabilize the price of essential goods while ensuring the availability of certain items such as poultry, eggs, and some other types of vegetables. Towards the end of the year, inflation didn't ease at all. In fact, prices continued to go up, and that triggered the government to extend the maximum price scheme until 4th of February this year. Dialogue like that? On one hand, animal feed cost keeps increasing. On the other hand, the government imposes a maximum cap on the selling price of chickens and eggs. This is like asking the poultry players to subsidize Satu Malaysia for the inflation cost. As a consumer, I have no complaints about that. But it is definitely not sustainable for the poultry industry and the country in the long run. Today, those smaller players are suffering from very high production costs. For most of them, because they don't have economies of scale, production costs have surpassed the cap price that was introduced by the government. The financial burden on their shoulders would eventually kill them if they are not allowed to determine the selling price by market forces. Actually, right, if you want to intervene in people's business, which involves disrupting the economics of doing businesses, then you should at least give subsidy to compensate for the shortfall. How can you ask people to jump and then don't provide a parachute to them? On the surface, this may look like just hurting the poultry business, but if things get out of control, all these players will have no choice but to close shop, and this could spin into a national food security issue. Having said that, the government also controls sugar prices, right? But sugar players get subsidies, Does it have to do with FGV or this? So, just how bad are the companies doing? First of all, let's look at Gai Wong, the chicken king, Leong Hup International. As the name suggests, Leong Hup is an international business operating in 5 different countries. To them, Malaysia business only contributes for roughly a third of their revenue, and because they are so big, they enjoy economies of scale. Another of a larger player, QL Resources, saw one of its largest shareholders, EPF, disposing its stake in the company at the beginning of 2022. Looking into their financial performance, 2/3 of QL's revenue comes from ILF, which is their poultry business. On the top line, everything looks fine, with a decent growth of 22% in the particular quarter compared to a year ago. But look at their profit before tax. Despite a revenue growth, PBT suffered a drop of a whooping 74% on the ILF business. Now, I won't be surprised if this business segment slips into the red in the upcoming quarter announcement, given the stubbornly high commodity prices like corn and soybean meal. Maybe that's why EPF takes action first. Just guessing. I don't have a crystal ball to confirm that. If big companies are suffering like that, how are the small players doing? 7 out of 10 names listed by The Edge are making losses. The remaining 3 suffered a drop of more than 20% in earnings. In my opinion, the situation can only turn around if our government is able to tame inflation. One way to do so is to appreciate the ringgit by increasing the OPR rate on banks. When interest rates become higher, not only will the ringgit appreciate, people also tend to save instead of plowing the money into financial assets, causing an artificial inflation on commodity prices. In the past 2 years, an overwhelming buying momentum on financial assets due to the low interest rate environment has been seen as a culprit, causing an artificial inflation on commodities. Well, it's easier said than done. When interest rates are high, borrowing costs become expensive. Already, the poultry industry is suffering from huge losses from not being able to set their selling price based on market forces. Cash flow is low. If interest rate were to increase now, it will make another hole in their financial position as they fork out more interest expenses on borrowings. Why do economic problems always seem so hard to resolve? Actually, I have a simple suggestion here, and hopefully the stakeholders are watching this video and consider this. Screw corruption and be a responsible policymaker of your own country. By doing so, you may not even need to trigger monetary policy to fix the issue faced by the poultry players and other businesses. When Malaysia can truly be corruption-free and policymakers are so clear about how their policies and regulation can steer the country towards a high-tech, high-income nation, naturally, investors will come to invest here. That itself will help the ringgit to appreciate without having to increase interest rates at all. So, Hafizi, I hope that helps you to have a clearer understanding of the poultry industry and figure out stocks that have potential returns. For the rest, that's all we have for today. #FARK.